All right, everyone. Welcome back to the PMO Summit. Hope you were able to join us from the start, where Kevin Agwana gave us a wonderful presentation. We're now on to the next segment of the summit, which is going to be a panel discussion. I am your panel moderator, Hussain Bandukwala. I'm the CEO and PMOpreneur at PMOs Consulting, where we help organizations improve project delivery in a variety of different ways, but mostly by helping them set up and optimize PMOs. This is going to be a PMO-focused panel where we're going to be talking about PMO challenges in general. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the stat that 50% of PMOs fail within the 3 years of their creation. Take that again. 50% of PMOs fail within the first 3 years of the creation. That is a stat by the Association for Project Management. That basically means that if I were to go ahead and set up a PMO, and if you ask me, hey, Hussain, will your PMO succeed or fail? I'd say, you know what, just give me a coin, let me do a toss, and tails is going to succeed, heads is going to fail. Well, all of us know that the value of a PMO is far greater than the probability of a coin toss. But the reality is that 50% do succeed and 50% don't. And so, needless to say, there are challenges that PMOs face. And based on what I've seen, there are generally 3 types of challenges that PMOs face. The first are challenges that are intrinsic to the PMO, which could include things like, having an overload of work, or having a very aggressive PMO roadmap, or perhaps even limited PMO leadership experience in setting up or optimizing your PMO. That's the first type of challenge, which is intrinsic to the PMO. The second type of challenge is something that's extrinsic to the PMO, but internal to the organization in which the PMO is getting set. So something like, lack of stakeholder buy-in, or perhaps misperceptions about what PMOs should do or could do, or about project management in general, or perhaps resource constraints, where there are challenges in people actually being able to get work done. And finally, the third type of challenge are external to the PMO's organization, which could be supply chain issues, regulation laws changing, or even new technologies getting introduced, such as AI, where things are getting disrupted all the time. Right? So the challenges do exist, but there's a silver lining to all of this as well, where we can solve these challenges and empower PMOs to succeed. And that is what our topic for today's panel discussion is going to be. I'm super excited about it and delighted to introduce our esteemed panelists. We have Jane Gallant from the city of Mississauga, Don Dickinson from J.D. Irving, Inez Alaska from National Energy Board, Inez, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Gary Wild from Regional Municipality of Peel, Tony Papetlo from Papetlo and Sons General Contracting, and perhaps who's going to be able to join us, Meki Java from Satistar Consulting. Welcome, all of you. Welcome to the panel and welcome to the summit. What we're going to be doing is we're going to go ahead and get everyone to introduce themselves, and everyone will have 5 minutes to talk about the current challenges that their PMOs are facing and what are they doing about it. So we'll go ahead and kick it off with Jane Gallant from the city of Mississauga. Jane is starting as a team leader at Next Innovations and SHL Systems House. Jane Gallant moved into the public sector with the city of Brampton, town of Markham, and is now at the city of Mississauga, where she heads the city's PMO. Welcome, Jane. Over to you, where we'd love to hear a bit about your situation, your role at the PMO, maybe a challenge that you're facing there and what you're doing about it.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak to you. Yeah, I obviously looked at my LinkedIn profile because I would not have gone as far back as some of those jobs I've had in the past, but I appreciate the effort. I should update that. So I just wanted to say, in terms of a project management office, and I know that's what the summit is today, but we are actually a project management support office. And I know you mentioned earlier that it's a coin toss when it comes to whether a PMO is going to be successful or not. And our office has been in place since 2010. So it's been 13 years. And when we first started, it was, and still is to this day, it is a support office. So what we do is we support the organization with their projects. So we don't actually have resources dedicated in the PMO to assign to the actual projects themselves. But this whole event that's happening today, and cut me off if I'm going on too long, sorry about that, is very timely because we are actually looking to potentially change what we currently have as a project management support office and potentially moving to something more. So that is what we're looking for or looking at this year. And we have sort of a State of the Union document that we're creating, and we have recommendations for what we would like to see the organization do and have in terms of a PMO. And this is great. All of this information, Kevin was fantastic with providing some really valuable information and the benefits realization. And yes, we are in the public sector, but there are still some benefits, namely, our taxpayers, right? Our constituents are the ones who are spending. I am one myself, right? I pay taxes. So it's my money that I want to make sure gets used properly by the government, right? Same with everybody else. That's what we are doing. That's our benefit. Our benefit is to make sure that every single dollar that's spent is of value to the actual residents and the constituents. So that's all I'm going to say for right now. Is that enough time, or I don't know?
Oh no, you can definitely go on, Jane, if that's something that you'd like to do.
No,
Absolutely.
don't let me go on because I will.
Sounds great, Jen. Thank you so much for that.
So I was going to say, sorry, one of the challenges too is that now we're historically we have been a support office. So to change that whole culture of being a support office to now being directed, or in some cases we do have pockets of areas within the organization that have their own project managers, and they have their own tools in which they use, and those are more seasoned project managers. The ones that we usually support are the ones that people are doing projects on the side of their desk, right? Like, so in addition to their regular operations, they also get told, oh, by the way, here's a few projects for you to do in addition to your regular job. So we help them with, creating the project charter, doing facilitated sessions, brainstorming, doing requirements, all kinds of stuff like that. So what the transition to go from what we were, a support office, to what we're going to be is going to be one of the biggest hurdles that we'll have to change. Well, it'll be change management, of course, right? It'll be a huge change management initiative, but hoping we could get there is my 2 cents worth.
Absolutely, and that sounds like quite a bit, Jane. We're definitely going to have more of an interaction on that between all the participants and panelists. But one thing that I wanted to ask right off the front was, is the change going to be focused on the entire city or within city's office, or just within specific departments such as IT or HR, procurement, or anything like that?
Well, that is still to be determined. But
okay.
If you're, in the public sector, there's a lot of areas within the departments that they believe, and it's, they are unique, right? They're snowflakes. Everybody's a snowflake. So they do projects totally different than others. And it's true, the deliverables are completely, we have some that are like strategic documents, we have construction projects, we have parks that are being created, we have new light poles, like there's a lot of different projects. So there'll have to be some kind of, hybrid. It's not necessarily something that would be across the board, because you know, we just don't have projects that are really, that are, you know, they're so diverse, right? They're across the board. So we'll have to have pockets again of areas that will, you know, take care of that. But right now it's just like we're still working out the actual, you know, what are the recommendations that we want to do and what do we want it to look like and how will it work, right? Because it doesn't work the same in all organizations, right?
No.
Like having one across the board might be okay for a smaller organization, but you know, but for us, we're big, right? We have a lot of departments, we have a lot of divisions, people, we have a lot of maturity level, like the maturity level varies across the organization, right? We have people who are brand new to project management and we have people that are senior. And so it really depends on, you know, where we're thinking of going with this. And it's got to be approved. I would tell you what it is, but it's got to be approved first.
Of course.
Going to our directors and so on and so forth.
No, this is great. So, you know, as I hear it, you know, you've had a supportive PMO for a while, Jane. Now we're looking to really take it to the next level, optimize it, perhaps, you know, had a set of recommendations, perhaps share your own, you know, viewpoints in terms of the direction you want to take. Now we're looking at eagerly waiting to get the approvals in the necessary directions, and then off goes the actual implementation and the corresponding change management for the PMO that's about it.
Which is the biggest piece, right?
Perfect. One last question for you, Jane, before I take it on. But and you don't have to give me an answer. It can be a total yes or no answer. But with the change of the recommendations and with whatever the direction the PMO is going to be, is there going to be a name change of your department? Will it become from a PMO to something else, or, you know, whatever the name is today is going to be something else, perhaps?
I'm going to say likely. I'm not going to say yes or no, but likely.
Right. So perhaps in addition to the scope of work and the sphere of influence of the entity, there is perhaps some rebranding going on there as well.
Possibly, yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, I wish you all the best, Jane, with that, and look forward to hearing more about it from unofficial fronts. Thanks, Jane.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to our next panelist, Dawn Dixon. Dawn is a project and portfolio management consultant with 25 years of project management experience, which includes managing programs and both establishing and running project management offices across various industries, including government, heavy construction, shipbuilding, nuclear, and information technology. Dawn, welcome. Welcome to the panel.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for asking me for my input. This is an exciting topic, really. Yeah, I've worn many hats. I started off life as an engineer. I've been a manager running projects and programs. I've been a resource manager managing teams, both within operations and within projects themselves. I've been a portfolio manager trying to do the arm wrestling of what work we're going to do and what goes back onto the back burner. I've been a PMO leader, establishing best practices and coaching project managers and making sure work is getting done consistently. And in the last 10 years, I've been consulting, and most of my work consulting is really looking at organizations and looking at it from the PMO perspective, assessing, looking at how the organization is doing from the PMO, or what value they're getting out of the PMO, looking at optimization of tools and processes and training, and then moving in and helping with that optimization. Again, people, process, and technology, the tools, the training, and the processes. That's really kind of key, and to keep PMOs not only off the ground and providing value, but continuing to evolve, because really the needs of what organizations need to get out of the PMO continues to evolve over time. One of the big challenges I see when I go into organizations is often what I call the shiny new object effect. Like all of us, we're all challenged to do too much work. We've got too many good ideas, too many good projects to do, and we just don't have the time and the resources to get them all done. That's true in my own life, and it's true in most organizations that I work with and see as well. And the answer is, we've heard the terms work faster, work smarter, not harder. Get more done with less, and then chase after that shiny new object or that silver bullet to try and resolve our problems and make us more effective as an organization. And what ends up is that organizations have this whole list of best-in-class tools, whether it's managing projects, whether it's managing work in an agile form, whether it's intake tools. They've got all of these tools and they've got all of these processes that are disjointed and they're not working together. Chasing after the shiny new object, maybe I'm not that much different. I go to the hardware store and I see this nice shiny tool and I come home and I dream up a project where I just have to buy it. And then it sits on my workshop table and collects dust for a while. So I understand that how this happens, and executives and leaders within our organizations, they'll go out and say, this is the new trend that we need to move towards, and we all rush from what we're doing today to this new trend, and then next year it's something else. Well, in doing so, we're collecting all this baggage along the way, and so we have all of this. All of these systems and these processes that again are disjointed and not talking to them each other, and all too often these sort of build up over time, and we end up with really kind of a mess. And I've seen it over and over again. So what we need to do is really sit back and understand what are we going to do. The solution to this, from my perspective, is really to try and standardize the process, standardize the tools that support those processes, define the source of truth for data that we need from those tools and those processes, and then integrate systems, and then finally build reporting around it. So when I talk about standardized process, I don't mean that, okay, we're going to do all of our projects in waterfall, and this is going to be the standard work breakdown structure and so on. That's not what I mean at all. I mean that we all need a certain level of standardization. When someone asks us to do work, we need to document it. We need to get certain approvals for it to move forward. We need to report the status in certain ways as we move it through. So that's the standardization that I'm talking about. And then when it comes to standardizing tools, we don't need 3 project management tools. We just need one. Right? And we need one that's configurable and can support all of our needs. And so there's a saving right there if we can get rid of all of these extra tools that support our process. And then we need to understand that source of truth. So what data sits where? So financial data, shouldn't be in your project management tool. The financial data really should come from your financial system, your accounting system. And if we need some of that data into our project, then let's interface that data in and bring it in. And so there's all this automation that can happen so that we're not double entering. When we double enter data in 2 different systems, one is always going to be out of sync. There's always going to be 2 sources of truth. We want to avoid that. Absolutely. And that's really where the integration comes from. And then finally, we can build this sort of reporting layer to report back up to executives. How are we doing with the resources that you've given us? So we've got so many dollars to spend. We've got a certain number of people that we can use. How did we use that to best affect or best impact the organization and deliver the benefits that we agreed to deliver? So that's kind of key, is to bring all of those things together. And, you know, a lot of organizations I go into, you know, like I say, there's all of these applications, and probably the worst one is that Swiss Army knife of management applications. And you know the one I'm talking about, it's Excel, right? And so I've seen very, very large billion-dollar portfolios all run with Excel, and there's multiple versions of it, and one version gets given to one executive and another to another. And you know, that really starts to break down the confidence in the in what the good work that you're doing managing projects and running PMOs, if we can't provide good confident reporting up through. So that's really kind of what I see as one of the big challenges is, okay, let's step back from chasing the silver bullet. Let's standardize processes, tools, technology, and provide good, consistent, accurate data that we can all make the decisions on.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that, Don.
Okay.
All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next panelist, Inez Halaska. Inez
Hello,
Halaska.
Hussain.
Hi, Inez.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing great, thanks.
Great.
Inez,
Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead. Sorry.
no worries, no worries. I'm just reading off of your bio here. Just want to go ahead and do a bit of a quick introduction. So Inez has 2 decades of project management experience across a broad range of projects types, including construction, both as an owner's rep and as a vendor, information technology implementations, business reorganizations, and event planning. She is currently working in the PMO of Canada Energy Regulator, a federal government organization regulating energy development and transportation across the country. Welcome, Inez.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. I'm excited to hear from my colleagues. And I should clarify, I'm actually the unofficial project management office in our organization. We're actually a very small agency. We're about 500 to 600 people, and compared to areas like JD Irving, City of Mississauga, we're just this little slice of the federal family. I have been working here since 2010, and when I started at it was the National Energy Board, we became the Canada Energy Regulator. We did have an official project management office, and at that time, I think they had just launched, and they had bitten off a bit more than they could chew. They were trying to be a tracking PMO. And at that time, I don't think the culture was ready for it. So then after a couple of years, like you said, Hussain, 50%, fail, pass. So the PMO was actually shut down. And the people within, I was one of them, got reassigned to run projects, and that's what we did. However, off the side of my desk, it was the unofficial PMO. So supporting, training, coaching, all of that. But as time went by, even though that was one of my main accountabilities, I just got assigned more and more projects, which I love. I don't mind that. But like Don was saying, there was this, then it became all these systems. People were doing different things, all those types of things. So the past few years, we have been trying to sell the benefit. It's a bit of, I think Jane also touched on this a bit. There's the culture buy-in, the WIFM, what's in it for them. It's about trying to sell the package and the benefit. But with most of government, and I think people know this, there is a lot of bureaucracy. So even within government, you say something like PMO, people get anxious. They worry about another level of reporting. Is someone going to be in my business when I'm just trying to get things done? And so I reverted back to that supporting role. So delivering training, giving a lot of coaching, thought leadership around what we could do, leverage what people do well. And we do have various levels of expertise and experience within the organization. And Dawn, you would be happy to know, we have one process map, just one. And it's very flexible.
Right.
So basically, there are key elements that you are required to have: a charter, a plan, and a closeout, deliverable acceptance. What you do, there are options in between there, is up to you. But again, there's this lack of integration. So our challenge here, one, is trying to sell the benefits and even having the time to do so, because it's not that we don't have the resources. We don't even have the resources to sell the benefits. However, a lot of you might have known just from being our public and watching the government, we're going through a lot of change. And that is a time to be innovative, to be creative, and within the government itself, the government federal family, there is this community where they have adopted a more formal project management approach. They do leverage the PMI, PMBOK, and that process. Now, since we are so small, we're still on the periphery, and it's, large departments like Department of National Defense, Health Canada, they might have the resources and expectations to have a formal PMO. For a small department agency like us, we are expected to have processes in place and make sure that we do our due diligence. But whether or not that's a formal PMO is another thing. So what I have been trying to focus on lately is the with them, the what's in it for them, the benefits, how to make leaders' life easier. So I've actually been researching Power BI apps through Microsoft. So Dawn, you mentioned data, the one source of truth. Maybe there's a dashboard we can build to access all those different systems for that one source of truth, so that a leader can come in and they have a dashboard and they know all the projects that are going on, where they're at, their portfolio per se. And I'm doing it to try and do it without saying the word PMO. And how it's packaged, it's just how it's packaged. And then on the flip side, I've been very lucky that a lot of our, not just junior project managers, but also intermediate and advanced project managers and their leaders have been coming to me for individual and customized coaching. And they've noticed that that has given them ideas of how to manage projects better and tools that they can use, and they're leveraging that, and that word is spreading. So I'm hoping there'll be a grassroots movement to say, hey, we can do this. And most recently, I've had an entire business unit ask me to deliver training, and we're going to do it in individual cohorts. And so their leader, who is an executive, is hoping to get the whole business unit trained. So I'm hoping to use them as a test case and an experiment to show the benefits to other groups within the organization, so that one, my time can be freed up so I can geek out on project management, change management, business analysis, all those types of things. And that other leaders can see that there is a benefit. There is a benefit, because then they can have, hopefully, I'm not saying they don't, but they could have more organized tracking and support. And like Kevin said, that long-term benefit realization. Because in the government, we get a new government, or they come in every 4 years or so, and there's potential for a new government to come in and new legislation and new direction. But the basics of what we do stays the same, of how we deliver our existing mandates. So right now, it's not just the resources to do projects, but my resources, and selling the package to leaders, especially my direct leader, that it's worthwhile to free up my time to do more of this. So we'll see what happens. So 50% just like you said, I'm hoping to flip the coin back over.
Oh, I'm loving
Thank
that.
you.
It's called a true redemption story right here.
Hopefully.
Right. And, oftentimes, when we operate as, project management and PMO professionals, we operate at this level, and our organization is usually, mired in a bit of chaos, and we're hoping that they're going to come up here. But the reality is that we often have to go down to their level and then slowly bring them up, right? And so that, the whole grassroots organic movement that's going on out there, I'm loving it. The fact that you already have an evangelist in an entire department form is
Yep.
is really good news. And it's not going to be your word that's going to make the difference. It's going to be theirs.
Yeah.
And the experiences that they feel. And so cheering you on right there, and looking forward to hearing more about it
Thank
in the
you.
near
So am
future.
I. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story here. All right, moving on to our next panelist, Gary Weil. Hey, Gary, how are you?
Thanks.
A quick intro for Gary right here. Gary Weil is a professional engineer and project manager with 18 years of experience in the private sector, plus 14 in the public sector. Currently, manager of the Digital and Information Services Project Management Office at the Regional Municipality of Peel. Gary has built not one, not two, not three, but 4 PMOs in the course of his career in the public sector. He has led projects in the fields of construction, power generation, energy management, corporate strategic projects, innovation, and information technology. Gary, great to have you here.
Thanks, Hussain. So my name is Gary Wild, and Hussain further to your statistics before on the longevity of PMOs. So I created the corporate PMO at the Region of Peel 13 years ago and the IT PMO 8 years ago. I can tell you they're both alive and thriving. So let's start with that. So these days I'm managing the IT PMO, which serves all the departments and divisions of the region. And my actual role is half IT PMO manager and half IT portfolio manager. And as part of that, I manage the portfolio of all the IT projects of the region. And as part of that project portfolio management responsibility, the IT PMO, we own the intake and prioritization process for all the IT projects. And we manage the governance boards as well and make all the business case approval and prioritization decisions for all the IT projects of the region. And there are 38 of us these days in the IT PMO. There's 15 project managers, 10 business analysts, plus we've got some program managers, a change management team, a supervisor, a coordinator, a business system analyst, and a performance specialist for all our reporting as well. And we've got well-established standards and processes and tools for project management and portfolio management, change management, governance, quality assurance, stage gating, writing business cases, benefits management, and we run both waterfall and agile projects. So in terms of challenges, so first of all, I'd like to comment that some of the traditional challenges for PMOs are as relevant now as they were 20 or 30 years ago. Basic things like making sure that the PMO's got a strong value proposition and doing effective resource management and building a good reputation with your clients and keeping PMO team members engaged and positively motivated to do a good job. So in the interest of time, I'll just speak about 2 of those and then I'll switch over to some challenges that are specific to modern times. So I'm making sure that your PMO has always got a strong value proposition. So you won't have a PMO for long if senior management and clients don't see this. So these days we use a value proposition canvas. And for those who are not familiar with that, this is a 1-page tool that's make sure that the services that you offer align very well with the aspects of your services that clients really value and align well with relieving the pains that clients are looking to be taken away from them by the kinds of services that you offer. And when you look at your service offerings from that lens, you can identify any gaps in your value proposition from clients and senior management perspective. And on the resource management side, we use a combination of full-time permanent staff plus contract staff and vendor of record staff for resourcing our projects. So our vendor of record contract is with a pool of pre-approved staffing providers. So we post our staffing requirements to the vendors and they put forward the best resumes. And it's particularly useful for us when we've got either a short-term staffing need. So for example, you need a 6-month contract role for somebody, or when we have a need for a niche skill set that the PMO doesn't have internally. And we also do the same thing when we're looking for a vendor team to work with us on a project. So we post our scope of work to a pool of pre-approved vendors and they bid on the work. And that's a lot faster than a traditional RFP or RFQ process. And we also provide a capacity forecast to our governance boards that approve and prioritize all the business cases. And that helps us a lot to set realistic expectations on how many new projects we can actually take on as a PMO. So our forecast will say, well, you can approve 3 new projects this quarter, plus 5 the next quarter, and 8 the next quarter, something like that. And then the governance boards then don't go approving a quantity of business cases that's beyond our real world actual resource capacity in the PMO. And then some challenges that we have that are particular to modern PMOs then. So first of all, keeping up with modern technologies. That's because we're living in an age when software and hardware is evolving at a faster rate than ever before. So we do have a PMO training budget, and the organization does have a tuition assistance program for employee training. We also encourage team members to tap into informal training methods. Not everyone's aware that many local libraries offer free access to LinkedIn Learning. And we're also all familiar with YouTube, where you can learn all kinds of things. And our PMO, it does serve a very diverse base of clients. There's actually 50 different lines of business at the region of Peel that we serve. And so it's not practical that a project manager or business analyst can keep up with all possible software for all possible clients. So what's more practical then is that you need a very strong partnership with enterprise architects and solution architects in your organization, because they are the experts on specific technologies. And part of our business case writing process is to obtain a technology selection recommendation from our architects. And then when you do that, you know you'll get a recommendation that aligns with the organization's target state architecture and the organization's architectural and platform standards as well, and security for that matter, cybersecurity. And then a subset of keeping up with modern technologies is that we see an increasing client demand for more and more software integrations, very much a theme this day and age. And so our architecture team proactively came forward with a business case to create an integration center of excellence led by the architecture team themselves, that had funding as well to bring in staffing resources dedicated to software integration work. And robotic process automation is something you may or may not have heard of. Well, that's another productivity tool for automating manual processes that allows you to connect one or even multiple software tools with others without having to do any complicated integrations. And so we've already started using a robotic process automation tool ourselves. And so I recommend everyone on this call to look into that as well. It's much simpler than doing integrations. And a last subset I'll mention of keeping up with modern technologies is keeping up with modern productivity tools, especially AI tools, which, as we all know, are very much a flavor of the day here. Well, first of all, we know that AI has been built into project portfolio management software for a number of years now, and that lets users carry out what-if scenarios on their project portfolios and do automatic portfolio optimization. And having said that, there's been an explosion of AI tools appearing on the market lately. And ChatGPT is the most well-known one these days, but it's far from the only one. And for now, at least, these tools are mostly free as well. So we've done some experimentation ourselves recently, and some of the PMO use cases that we found were things like updating job descriptions. So we asked the AI tools to write a good job description for example, a senior IT project manager for the public sector. Surprisingly good results came back. And we asked for a risk management plan, for example, for specific technology implementations, like, for example, an SAP software implementation, something like that. You can be specific. And we asked for some business requirements as well for a specific technology implementation. And we learned as well, these tools can do a really good job of writing a specific policy for you. They can put some learning material together for you as well, including quite specific material. And we also have a change management team, as I mentioned, within our own PMO. And we know AI tools are really strong at things like, please write a message to such and such an audience to announce such and such, maximum 1 page long. You can add those kind of specifics and qualifiers. Or please write a marketing campaign or a change management plan for a specific technology. So we see AI as being particularly valuable for change management teams within PMOs in particular. And so what we found was that the results of all these types of queries are actually surprisingly good. And even if the content that you get back from these kind of tools is only 50% usable, that's still a major productivity boost for you, because you're already halfway there to your finished product. So to finish off then, we're planning to do a demo of these use cases that we found so far at our next PMO team meeting, and that's to generate some other productivity improvement ideas. We want to hear what project managers and program managers and business analysts and change managers have to say for some other ideas for potential use cases as well. So I will stop there with that in the interest of time.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing that, Gary. I think what you said there coincides a lot with what Don said as well, right? So I mean, tools, standardization, governance, and then also helping with the productivity boost, right? And one of the biggest things, with AI tools in general, that help with productivity boost, things like ChatGPT, etc., you can start with ground zero. But then there are certain AI tools, such as the advanced portfolio management tools, which require data that you can rely on, data that can be easily produced, right? It's sort of a garbage in, garbage out situation. And I think where a PMO can be certainly helpful there is preparing the organization so to a point where the data is at a place where it is the absolute, source of truth, like Don said. And so I think that is definitely something in a PMO's job description that could be added in, if it's not there already, to help the organization get to a point where it can start leveraging AI tools where it wasn't possible earlier. Thanks so much for sharing your perspectives, Gary.
Well said. Thanks, Hussain.
All right, and now we're going to be moving on to our last but not least panelist for today, Tony Popatello. Tony, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Welcome,
yeah,
Tony.
Yeah.
All right, Pop.
Thank you for being here, Hussain, and to Kevin and all of you PM colleagues. Nice to be here. Very informative current discussion. So thank you to you all, and happy to be here. It's my first panel. So yeah, away we go.
Absolutely, Tony. Just a quick bio and introduction for the benefit of the audience. Tony Popatello Jr. is responsible for a portfolio of construction projects with Windsor, Ontario area general contractor Popatello and Sons. He is also a past winner of the Canadian Project Excellence Awards as Canadian Small Project of the Year in 2022 for restoration of an endangered historical church. Congrats on that, Tony.
Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy, and that's part of what I'll discuss today in terms of challenges and overcoming them. And so yeah, we're a 63-year-old general contracting company.
And Tony, sorry to cut you off, but as I understand, your organization actually might be slightly smaller than INES is as well. So it'd be very interesting to hear your perspective and the impact of PMOs.
Yeah, so and I'll get into that as well, piggybacking what Don said also in that regard. But yeah, we're probably anywhere from 10 to 30 during season, so about 10 to 15 in the office, and then the rest in the field. I've been with them for about 20 years ish, on and off. And so predominantly, 60s, 70s was more residential. Then the boom in the manufacturing auto sector. This part of the province and the country. So we kind of adapted to ICI sector. And as Inez and Jane know, there's a lot of institutional spending going on, P3 projects, small, medium, large scale, from Vancouver all the way to Halifax, and everything in between. So my forte is more on the industrial and institutional. Predominantly this particular project, which I'm still working on, it's a historical restoration on a 178-year-old church. It actually inspired me to do my MBA, and my thesis is on adaptive project management solutions, which is very complementary to my line of work and my pivoting towards being a PM. Construction is funny because construction management, we were general contractor moving into ICI. We had divisions of, soft, quote unquote, construction management, and even small firms popped up. Nowadays, it's because of government compliance, regulatory environment, safety, union affairs that are related to, our line of work and our business models, critical scheduling. It's really adapted into a PMO. So if that makes sense in our industry anyway, I'm sure a lot of the municipalities, provincial, and federal level of governments, they can agree on that. So I started on this project just before pandemic. We've had, first of all, we're down manpower, labor shortages across the board. So there's a labor shortage issue, skilled trades short. Private sector, there's funding issues. We've had union strikes in pretty much across the board of all uniform issues that we had to overcome. Even pre-pandemic, and out of that is supply chain, logistics, material pricing, which affected critical scheduling, how do you, price, how do you deal with your client and so forth of these matters, inflation, because of the nature, I'm dealing with a Catholic church, funding is even more short and critical. We've had heritage approval issues, which it's not really my business to get involved, but working with stakeholders, you learn a lot of politics and obstacles dealing with heritage buildings, monuments of all sorts and shapes and sizes. It's approximately 25 million to complete over 9 years. It's a multi-phase approach, so we're tackling each phase. So let's get into how do we overcome. What I'm finding more and more on projects like these, people I talk to all over the world actually, and what I've learned is be more flexible with the stakeholder, with the clients, with the entire stakeholder team, be more aggressively, and by that I mean more hands-on. And I've learned to be more hands-on in the boardroom, in the office, on the road, on the site, and being more flexible. You have a little more leeway and more of a win-win with the client, with the project, and even the phase of the project. Yeah, I'd like to have waterfall and path goal theory techniques and models, but it doesn't always work. So I found being, working with the team in kind of like a combined leadership capacity, if that makes sense. I'm finding it more, be more flexible and be more open to, solutions. And that's how you get through phases. And then out of a phase, you have your lessons learned and so forth through all the PMBOK style tools and techniques. Be more adaptive, be more agile. And I think that's the client, the stakeholder, the difficult types of phases on complex projects. I think that's how we're overcoming it. And as a result of it, the metrics, we were ahead of schedule and under budget in almost all the areas. So yeah, that's what I've seen in the institutional part of construction, what's going on down here. And yeah, that's, and again, it inspired me to do my MBA thesis on adaptive PM solutions. So yeah, that's all I have at the moment.
Thanks so much for sharing your perspectives, Tony.
Yeah.
All right, and now, sorry, what was that, Tony?
No, I'm all set. If there's any questions at all, it's okay. I can.
Sounds great, Tony. Thank you. We're actually going to now shift into the phase of the panel discussion where we're going to open it up to questions coming from me as well as from the audience. So the audience, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask either any of the panelists specifically or in general, please feel free to include them in the chat. I'll go ahead and kick it off, right, by a question of my own. So the way I see the PMO's journey, there are like 3 distinct phases. The first is pre-PMO setup, where you're actually trying to make a case for the PMO or to make it, even if it's unofficial, trying to make it official. Then the second phase is really about setting up a PMO, and the third phase is once the PMO is set up, then optimizing it. If I were to ask any of you for any of these 3 phases, the first challenge that comes to mind, what would it be? How about we go phase by phase? So first phase, when we're actually trying to build a case for the PMO before the PMO setup, what do you think would be the biggest challenge that people should be on the lookout for?
I think so it goes beyond the value proposition. It's having who those leaders are, the people who would give the resources and the money and support the PMO, having them truly internalize and understand it. So we can get caught up in technical language and those kinds of things, but even what Tony was saying around being more flexible with your stakeholders and those types of things. I often think of it as relationship building, because this is supposed to be a long-term relationship. We often refer to people as our clients, but it is that how do we help people succeed? Projects are people, regardless of whether or not you're building an IT system, construction, people implement, people do them, projects are people. So I find that one of the challenges is trying to get people to even understand. and internalize so that they can buy in.
I love that. I love that, Inez. What you also said when you were doing, were sharing your perspectives earlier on was the what's in it for them situation, right? And oftentimes it's not just that, but sometimes people just love to hear that whatever you're doing is just for themselves. And the fact that you're doing something which was something of your own accord, but even making them hear and think that you're doing it just because it's their idea, just prompts the buy-in even more, right? But to your point, ultimately, it's all about what is it that they need to get out of this, right? Oftentimes I tell PMO leaders, it's, what do we care about from an accounting department? The only thing we care about is the fact that we get our paychecks on time. Everything else, it doesn't matter what tools they use, what systems they use, what processes they use, how efficient they are, we don't care, as long as our paychecks are done on time. Similarly, if you put ourselves in our stakeholders' perspective, all they care about is their projects are getting done on time, or they know what's happening in the project, or whatever it is, that relationship that they have with the projects. And that is what they want to get done. And that is ultimately what the PMO can help with. Thank you for sharing that, Inez. All right. And so if you wanted to take,
Hussain, I can add to that. Yeah.
Sorry,
So
was it Gary? Yeah, go ahead, Gary, please.
Yeah, if you're trying to justify the creation of a PMO, you have to be really clear on what type of PMO you want, because PMOs can offer a smorgasbord of choices of services, and that has to match what the actual business need is. So you've got to be really clear on what the business need is right from the beginning, and you've got to have sufficient senior management support for which of those services you're actually proposing. And you also got to be not too ambitious, because you might think it'd be cool to offer a huge selection of services, but you don't have the capacity when you first start off. You've got to build. And you've got to earn your reputation over time, and you've got to have full senior management support every step of the way as you go there. Also, to add to what Inez said, when you're acquiring resources, then you've got to pick very carefully who you're going to bring into the PMO, especially if you're trying to borrow from other resource managers, other departments, other divisions. You're trying to pull those staff in and take them away from other departments. You will get resistance for that. And the other thing you've got to be careful of as well is not to create a type of a perception in the organization that if you make it in a PMO, you're one of the elite chosen few. And if you don't make it in a PMO, you're considered chopped liver kind of thing. So you've got to be careful about your messaging in the beginning of creating the PMO to not create that elitist perception.
That's a wonderful add-on there, Gary. Thank you for that. That makes so much sense. And the one thing that I would like to add to that, Gary, I think what you said was wonderful, was that there's only so much capacity that you have to provide, right? And I would also add that there's only so much capacity that your stakeholders have to digest and receive, right? Take training, for example. You can give someone any amount of training as much as you can, but the fact is, how much of it will they be able to digest, accept, and then be able to learn and implement it? Very, very little. And if we're going to go ahead and give them all the hoard of services that we really all want to give, something that you said, as you said, Gary, would make us look cool. Probably not going to happen. It's going to be overwhelming. They're going to feel overloaded. And guess what? Because of that, actually nothing will happen. Great perspective, Gary. Thank you for sharing. Okay, while I had some of those questions to get us kick-started, I think we've got a couple of questions coming in from the audience as well. So the first one is actually from Inez. Tony, is there a place where we can read your thesis?
My proposal's done. It's due Labor Day weekend, so I'd be happy to give it to you and to review and your comments. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Tony. Our next question is from Amira Beod, and this question is for everyone. Using agile and waterfall practices, how do you build processes and data for reporting to senior management?
Okay, I could start with that one. So we made a decision a few years ago that we wanted to be out of the business of writing status reports and maintaining distribution lists and sending them out to people and keeping all that updated. So the way we did that was we required all project managers in the organization to use Microsoft Project, and there's an enterprise database that stands behind that. So you've got access to all data, therefore, that gets entered into Microsoft Project. And then we use Microsoft Power BI to create templates for the different reports. So there are dashboard types of reports for senior management. There's also a status report view. that's meant for project teams and project stakeholders and sponsors and so on. None of these things is created. These are standard templates, and those templates just use Power BI to pull whatever data they need. Sometimes you have to reach outside of the Microsoft project database, but not very often. Sometimes you can actually reach into SharePoint to grab information from anything like Excel that's put in SharePoint. It's very easy for Power BI to point towards anything that sits in SharePoint, which Microsoft Project does as well. So that way, the whole process is automated, and then we just give a link to anybody to here are the views that you can look at those links any point in time. So it's like live real-time views. And we ask the project managers to update every 2 weeks. So you're looking at a minimum of an update every 2 weeks. But of course, if there's updates in between, you always see the live data. So that's how we did that. And we created specific views in Power BI, specific dashboards for specific audiences. So there's stage gating views, there's the portfolio views for anyone in senior management, that type of thing.
I have a follow-up question. Oh,
okay.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Jane.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Now I lost my train of thought.
Okay. How about I ask and then you can hopefully.
Okay.
So Gary, actually, I've been looking into Power BI and I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm wondering when I think about the culture that we have, I feel like there's that change process or change management effort, like around collecting requirements, trying to understand the true points of, this leader cares about this kind of thing, and then onboarding them and testing. Did you guys roll that out like a project, like an agile project? Like you provided here's what it looks like. Does this work? Got feedback, went up and updated it? Or how did you find out or roll it out to senior management?
So it was step by step. So we started with a template. It was one page, so it would fit on one computer screen, project status report. So we standardized the status report. We got all the project managers then entering information, the right information to Microsoft Project, so that would populate all those fields in Power BI. So that's how it all got started. And then from there, we started asking senior management, what do you want to see for reporting? So first of all, they wanted a portfolio report. Give us the whole portfolio of all IT projects at the region of PA. So we created again a one pager in Power BI. Again, nobody's populating that. It's all pulled automatically by Power BI. So you need somebody in your team, this is my advice as well, that they need to become a guru, as it were, of Power BI. Get to learn how to do it, get to learn how to write these standard templates and so on, and how to point Power BI to pull the right kind of data from the right places. It's not that hard. And from there, it went on to asking senior management and different senior management audiences, well, what else would you like to see? What else would be of value to you? And because we're involved in project stage gating, we're involved in benefits management, we're involved in portfolio management, people wanted go live views, what's upcoming for our go lives in the next 3 months, 6 months, and so on. There was various needs like that. So we just kept building them one by one to match what the needs were of senior management.
I remember my question. You mentioned a couple times now about making PMs do it, making PMs use Microsoft Project and making them use Power BI. Like, how do you make them do that exactly? Like, there's got to be hundreds. You must have hundreds of project managers, right? So how is it that you get them to how do you get buy-in from them, commitment? Do they just say, okay, I'll do it? Like, we have people that use Microsoft Project, but I also have an Excel version of a schedule because not everybody uses it. And so I'm like, well, how did you get everybody to use Microsoft Project?
So your own reporting is not going to be credible if some people use it and some people don't, to your point, Jane. So it has to be made mandatory. So let's be clear on that. So there has to be a standard written in your project management playbook or whatever you call your standard document, your methodology, whatever, that says you will do this.
Thou shalt.
What's in it for me for project managers then is that you don't have to write a status report, because before we got involved with Power BI, and one of the jobs of project managers was you had to write regular status reports yourself, and that takes a long time to write that yourself. So that was the time saving, first of all. Second of all, we had a lot of pressure from senior management to say, well, we need accurate, up-to-date reporting here, not piecemeal or out-of-date reporting. We've got to be able to trust it. And the only way that's going to work is you have to make it mandatory. So, how do we make it mandatory? We chase people as well. So it's the job of our project coordinator to review, and it's done on a bi-weekly basis. So the coordinator, actually with others in the team, in the PMO team, review all the status reports. We go through a whole lot of them quickly. And we just look for things that are out of date, missing, that type of thing. And if they're out of date, the project coordinator will chase that project manager. Hey, you need to update this and so on. So I think they get used to it over time that if I don't keep this up to date, this person's going to be chasing me anyway.
Yes, but you're absolutely right. You definitely need, well, with change management, right? You definitely need senior management buy-in and commitment.
Yes.
Because without
I've
that,
worked with,
falls to the
sorry.
wayside.
I've worked with organizations that have kind of taken that to the next step as well, where you have you have automated metrics around the performance of project managers in keeping their project up to date. And so that, that
Interesting.
all of a sudden becomes a, I don't want to say the wall of shame, but it's very public information of who's maintaining their system well and who's not. And without that data, nobody can make decisions. And
that's right. Yeah.
It's in their best interest to keep all of that up to date. So
that's right. And can be tied to your performance review too. Technically.
It certainly can be. And it's one of those things, it's a habit. And if you can have a bit of a tool to help nudge along, 90% of the people will just get into the habit and start to follow it. You'll always have 10% of the people that you have to chase, and that's reality, and that's part of what the PMO has to take on, I guess.
Yeah,
And I think too, Jane, sorry, I was
No,
just going to say,
go ahead.
For federal, for our area, because we are supporting PMO like yourself, so we don't have direct influence over our project managers. And a lot of our project managers are actually contractors. So when I spoke with our IT department, who hires a lot of project managers, and they were saying, we don't know what's going on, we're trying to figure out what's going on. I mentioned to them, well, do you have whoever the project managers report to on board? Do they know what they need to do, what they're expected to enforce, and how are we onboarding our contractors? There is a responsibility on organizations that if you want a contractor or a PM or someone to follow a process, that you onboard them, you give them the tools, they're aware of it. But just like Gary and Dawn said, someone has to enforce it. So,
that's right.
and the WIFM, right? So in our IT area, our digital project area, they report to the Chief Information Officer, who is responsible for all the IT projects, and they need a report. And if they don't know what's going on, that means projects could be running amok. So that's like, if you have that kind of structure, who's ultimately accountable for the benefits of those projects, for the budget, for the scope, for what's happening, and how are we supporting the people who have to do these processes and then enforcing it, or reinforcing it rather.
Reinforcement,
Yeah,
I think one
that's
thing to add.
Go ahead, Tony.
I just want to add on everything. I can't speak on the IT infrastructure side like you guys had noted, but on a communications plan and a distribution of critical document, I find more inclusion from the beginning, from project agents, whether how junior or senior. That way, that spills out to more go-tos around. Maybe it's security protocol, maybe it's.
Sorry, Tony, could you please maybe perhaps speak up just a bit?
Yeah, is that better now?
Oh yeah, so much better.
Okay,
thank you.
Sorry, so on the, I don't know where I left off, but the, just for communications plan of distributing documents or progress reports from the ground up, more inclusion, whether it's an IT, support, or a media consultant that's taking, drone shots and taking still shots and videography of progress. I find more inclusion of, junior project agents all the way to senior, and that what translates to is more go-to, so that then the senior leadership doesn't have to be as micromanaging, and there is more project control from the beginning, middle, and closeout at the end. That's what I'm seeing on this one particular, and I think it's working well. We just have to, keep it that way and impose the will of the leadership, and see it through. So that's what one trend I'm noticing, and it's working well.
Those are great points, all great points, everyone. And essentially what I'm hearing is, in order for someone to to make someone else do something, right? In this case, getting PMs to use Microsoft Project, or whether it's Jira, or whether it's Power BI, or anything else, you've got to use a bit of a carrot and stick approach. There has to be some sort of governance and reinforcement about it, some reinforcement about it, and there's some WIFM piece in it as well, right? And I'm curious what your perspectives are. Is there any particular order in which these things should take place? Because I understand that some of these things may need to be done in tandem, or perhaps in a sequential order. But I'm curious from your experiences if you should try one before the other, show a bit of TLC first, some tender love care, understand what their pains are. Why aren't they actually really focused on Microsoft Project? Why are they really keen on Excel? Is it because they don't want to learn? Is it because they don't know anything about it? Because they're scared of or putting in more effort? Or is it something else? Or you go straight to the full governance approach and make an enforcement approach and make sure that they get it done. So I'm curious about that. And while you respond to that, I'm also curious if you had something similar, whether it's for Microsoft, in addition to Microsoft Project, for another tool like Jira. I know the audience is really keen on Jira as a tool as well, and I'm curious if whether it's usage of Jira or combination of Jira and Confluence together. What are your thoughts?
For us, I guess it depends on where you are in actually the PMO piece, right? So for us, because I am a supporting PMO, it's mostly around that change management model. Are people aware of what they need to do? Do they know? Do they have the ability? Do they have the access to the tools? Do they want to? Yeah, because there might be that question around, I'm not comfortable with Excel, those kinds of things. Like first, always give people the benefit of the doubt, but make sure that you're giving them what they need to meet the expectations and what is the WIFM. And the reinforcement piece comes, most people, if they're experiencing a change, they will try to adopt. It takes a process. It's not all 100%, just like Don was saying, there's always going to be 10%. And reinforcement is more about, it's not the stick, right? It's, it might be reminders, how long, if you're going to have a standardized process or something and you need people to follow it, one, you need senior management on board, because if they're not on board or their leaders aren't on board, it's not going to happen, right? So, and you need to celebrate the wins. So when we had, it was our IT project managers, they started having monthly meetings with senior management to give updates. And it was about, even though it was a status report, it was about celebrating where they were in their projects and the wins, and then gathering input from senior management of where help was needed to remove barriers. So I guess it just depends on where you are in that process. Are you launching a new process? And if it's someone new who's supposed to do the process, have they been given the tools, the knowledge, the expectations? Do they understand them before you get to the hardcore, stick? It's more about carrot until that point. I don't know if anyone, Gary, it'd be really interesting to hear, since you've had 4 PMOs, how you guys have done it.
So for us, we talk about project managers. So we get an education on all the project management standards that you have to follow. So you're going to be fully aware, and there'll be a walkthrough of all of those as well. They're not just, here, I'm sending you a link, read them and digest them and get on with it. And also as part of that orientation session, we also connect our performance specialist, who's a reporting expert. That's the Power BI Microsoft Project Guru. So that person connects with the new project manager, gives them an education session on Microsoft Project itself. And the purpose of that is to say, just so you're really clear, these fields in Microsoft Project need to be filled out every 2 weeks. So then we're really clear that, that there's no fields going to be missing every time you do your updates.
Fantastic. All right, everybody, we are about 5 minutes left into our session. And there is a question that we have from Arun Jain, which is for Gary and others. This is going to be the last question for our panel. Are there instances of you being involved in digitizing the PMO processes that all in the organization can use for day-to-day work? And if there are any instances of Jira that you've had experiences with, would love to hear about that as well.
Okay,
I can
maybe I
start.
can start then.
Or no, go
Jane?
ahead. No, go ahead. It's okay.
Okay, so in terms of digitizing processes, that's a really broad question there, because PMOs run a great many processes. Even if you're just a project manager, for example, you've got so many processes from beginning to end of a project. And the question might be more focused around the use of tools, because processes can mean many things. It can mean hiring processes and things like that that are not going to be online. But reporting, things like that, is going to be online and digitized because there are tools that put it all online. So, there are certain tools that we do use to do our work. So Microsoft Project is one of them. Business analysts have got their own tools as well that they use also. And the Power BI we already talked about is the main tools that we use for digitizing these things. We also run a lot of portfolio management processes that all have their own unique tools as well. And many of those tools are made available to the organization. So we have an inventory, for example, that we publicize that anybody can access in the organization on. If you want to see any service request or any business case that came forward to our intake process, they're all available. All of these governance boards, all the meeting agendas, all the minutes of meeting, they're all made available as well. You can also go into some new SharePoint-based search tools as well. And you can search for absolutely anything related to the entire intake process and all of those artifacts I just mentioned there. So a lot of the things are digitized through the use of tools. That may be the best answer. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Gary. Go ahead, Jane.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in our organization, because of the pandemic, and it came out of the pandemic, we digitized our project charter. So we had it in a Word document before, but because there was a lot of, before the pandemic, we printed them and had people physically sign them off and then PDF them and that sort of thing. Well, it wasn't practical, obviously, during the pandemic. So we converted our Word version to a digital version using InfoPath front end and a SharePoint backend. And then we also followed our digital signature policy. So we have this workflow that goes through our development stage of the project charter, and then approvals, and then it's final, and it's all online now. So we've moved completely off. Well, not completely, because there's still some people, the 10%, right, that are still using the old version, but we're going to be, we'd like to cut that off at some point. But yeah, that was just to automate the signatures and make that a little more easier during this whole pandemic.
Great points there, Jane. Yeah. So similarly on our end here, we've got all of our standards are all online, through our PMO website. And all of our templates, the whole library of templates, is available online as well. It's also normal practice. Again, we're talking about tools every time here. Every time a business analyst works with a client on a business case, they create a Microsoft Teams space, a workspace for everyone to collaborate in. And similarly, when a project manager begins a new project, when they assign a new project, they create a space as well. And that space is used as both a repository and a collaboration space as well. So that kind of culture is there for sharing and working online as well, again, through tools.
Is that SharePoint?
So yes, that's where the repository is now, yes.
Yeah, so we have project sites as well. So if there's a cross-divisional, cross-departmental project that deals with a lot of stakeholders and core team members and extended team members, then people will fill out a form in order to get a project site. So we have team sites and project sites and knowledge sites and all this stuff, but project sites are one of them. So everybody can collaborate on them. Yeah, same idea.
That is fantastic. And I think, Gary, when you spoke earlier, you gave a lot of examples, using, AI tools to help day-to-day work, such as job descriptions, such as change management support for teams, and I've seen PMOs use different ideation ideas, as well as with the advent of AI, you'll have better improved use of tools such as task delegation, improved resource management. We've already seen portfolio management into effect as well. But you don't necessarily need to wait for AI, as you both alluded to right now. There are other technologies that you can use to automate and optimize day-to-day work and effort, which is not just helpful for PMO leaders, but for PMs, coordinators, and business analysts and others within the PMO as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. Again, with that was the last and final question of this wonderful panel. I want to take a moment again to thank you, Jane, Gary, Inez, Dawn, and Tony, for participating in our panel today. It was exciting to meet all of you and learn more about your experiences. We hope to stay in touch and look forward to hearing more from you and about your PMOs in the future. Thank you. And to
Thank
the
you very
audience
much.
out there.
Thank you, Hussain.
Great, thank you. And to the audience out there, just want to say that our next speaker, Mark Kozak-Holland, will start in about 5 minutes. So we'll break for a bit till we switch over to our next presenter, Mark Kozak-Holland. Thank you, and see you soon.